In this video, we are going to create the update method which will allow us to update the existing record in a database. So after our last method, which was called find, a few new lines, and let's create a new public function called update. Public because obviously we need to have access to this method from the outside of this or any class that will extend it. Array values is going to be the first argument. Second argument will be the ID of the record, and the third will be the field, by default set to ID. But it might be any other field. So if we want to update several records, let's say which share the same value in a given table column, then we can obviously specify the column name here, overwriting this field property. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is again check if, and then exclamation mark, and from the container we are going to pull our database, so get db database instance, and on this instance we are going to run call the update method, and we are going to pass the first argument is going to be the name of the table, so the whatever value we're going to associate with our table property. Then we are going to pass values, which is going to be associative array of fields and values. And then we are going to have ID and the field name. Okay, so we're checking, and I'm in between the brackets if it negative, meaning if it failed, if we weren't able to update the records, we are going to throw a new exception. So new exception, just a standard one, and the record could not be updated. And after this, we simply return this find, and we're looking for the ID and then a field as the second argument to our find method. Okay, let's add the doc blocks to this method, and it's going to say update record. So that's our update method. The next one we're going to be working on is the method that allows us to remove the record from a database, and it's going to be called simply delete. So public function delete, it will take two arguments, ID of the record, and then if it's not ID, then obviously we can overwrite it again. So field equals by default it's going to be ID, and then we simply return using our container. We pull the database instance again, and then call delete method on the database instance, passing the table name as the first argument, then ID and the field. And that's all inside of our delete method. It's pretty straightforward. We're basically using the, again, delegating the call to the delete method on our database. If we look for the delete here, you can see table name, ID, and then the field name. And that's what's going to be executed basically on the database. Okay, let's add the doc blocks as well. And this one simply removes the record. So remove record. There we go. So that's this one. The next method will allow us to fetch multiple records, and it's going to be called all. So public again function all, because it needs to be accessed statically, publicly. We don't pass any arguments to this method, and we return automatically container get, again, database instance, and the method fetch objects with s at the end because we want to fetch multiple objects. And the first argument to this call will be the call to the internal method called full statement. We don't have this method yet, we'll create in just a moment. So basically this full statement will return the entire statement that needs to be run in order to fetch these records. The second argument will contain values which we want to bind to the placeholders of the statement, which is the first argument to this call, and these values will be stored within the statement values property of this model class. If we scroll up, you see we have the statement values here, which will contain values for the SQL statement. And it's obviously of the array type. And the third item is basically, again, late static bindings to get the name, the full name, including the namespace of the class on which we are calling this all method. So static with 2 colons and class to get a fully qualifying name of the class. Okay, and then doc blocks again for the all method, get all records. Now, full statement method. So let's quickly add this one. And this method will simply return whatever this SQL method contains, plus it will append the partials of the statement, which are going to be combined together and appended to this basically basic statement. And it's going to be returned using the statement method, which we'll create in just a moment. Semicolon at the end. Let's quickly click on this SQL. You can see the SQL method only contains the basic SQL statement. Select all from the table, but we may have some where clauses, limit, and so on, order by. So obviously this statement now method will be able to return any additional conditions to our statement basically. What we are also going to do is pass the argument through, append, and by default this argument will be null. So we can, on top of what's already going to be returned by the statement, append also anything else that we want to do. Let's say limiting records to 10 or whatever else. So append is going to be passed through as an argument to the statement. Let's create the statement method as well. Before we actually start working on the statement, let's put the doc blocks for the full statement, and we are going to put summary as get full SQL statement. And statement, the argument will also be null by default because it might be null. And this one will simply return, and we're going to use implode here. We are going to glue it with a space and between a single double quotes space, and then we are going to use property of model of the model class called statements, which will basically store partials of the SQL statement, and then we are going to append whatever has been passed through as an argument. There may be nothing, there may be just null, but if there is anything else, that's going to be appended to whatever a string is going to be returned after this implode call. And the statements, what these statements can contain, I'm going to put some statements here on this new line. Let's say our array of statements may contain something like where name is, say, equals something, then the next item in this array may be and date is less than now, and so on. So basically all these items, these partials of the SQL statement, will be stored as array items in this statement associated with the statement property, and this is where we're going to implode them using a space, creating basically the SQL statement. So returned, once we implode, everything is going to return the string similar to, let's say, something like this, depending on obviously what the statements array will contain. Okay, let's put the doc block for this one as well, statement, and that's going to get combined SQL statement. And let's continue our exercise in the next video.